Another big rivalry game. This is one I feel like we've been assuming a result for about a month. And now that it's here, I'm not so sure I assume that result. South Carolina at Clemson. Clemson's a 2.5-point favorite in this game. The result I think we've been assuming for a month is that South Carolina will win. You are shaking your head.
That's wrong. That's not right. Clemson's not better than South Carolina right now. And I understand it's a rivalry game. I know it's at Clemson, but I'm taking South Carolina money line and not even thinking about it.
I'm not taking South Carolina. I'm going to take those 2.5 measly points because I just took the money line in another one because the seeds of doubt crept in when Vegas made Clemson a favorite. And I don't know if that was to rope-a-dope people into just hitting South Carolina hard and swinging it back the other way. Do you think this line's going to flip during the week?
I do. Yeah.
I do too. This is why I'll take some free points if they're going to give them to me. Because
but here's the thing. There are a lot of casual bettors out there that don't watch the sport like us and will just think that South Carolina is South Carolina. Like, if South Carolina plays a good, clean football game, they are better this year than Clemson. Like, is that a fair thing to say?
I think that's a very fair thing to say. Cade Klubnik has torched some teams with his legs, but those are all teams that don't have the kind of speed on defense that South Carolina has.
Yeah. And somebody just accused me of recency bias. Isn't like we're picking how teams are playing. Right
the game's
now.
this week, so what happened recently matters.
No, I mean, if I'm not paying attention, then someone's saying I'm not paying attention. Enlighten me. I watched the entire Louisville game, and I think that team's issues aren't easily fixable when you're playing a really good opponent.
Right. And South Carolina has a better defense than, let's say Clemson did backdoor into the ACC championship game. South Carolina still might have a better defense than anybody Clemson might play going forward after that.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah. People in the chat are accusing me of being recency bias, but that's what they were saying last week when I took Kansas.
The game is this week. What happened in the last few weeks matters.
Yeah, and the game's at Clemson, I get it. I'm not saying that Clemson cannot win. That's what gambling is. But if I had to pay my money, I'd feel safer with it on South Carolina. I think South Carolina has multiple ways it can win the football game. And I don't know if Clemson has multiple ways.
I think you're right about that. And and South Carolina's offense has come around to this feels very similar to 2 years ago when South Carolina went up there. The difference is 2 years ago, South Carolina kind of flipped a switch and beat Tennessee and then beat Clemson. South Carolina's been doing this for a month now. Maybe longer. Probably since the Alabama game, which they should have won, but they didn't. But they were playing well in that game. This is going to be...
The only game that South Carolina should not have won was Ole Miss on their entire schedule.
Right. They got clobbered in that game.
Yeah.
So
they should have beaten LSU. They should have beaten Alabama.
I'll take South Carolina to cover. You will take South Carolina money line. Producer River has put up a poll. 87% of the chat is picking South Carolina in this game. I think we're dealing with a few outliers here. You're getting yelled at by a few outliers, Ari, and it's getting in your head. I don't think you need to worry about that.
That's my number one thing I need to work on is who I'm yelled at and who I respond to. Yeah.
Tiger fan 24, Clemson fan. This is a very reasonable take here. We can win if we show up. If we don't, it's going to be ugly. I think that's exactly right. Clemson can win this game. It's not a foregone conclusion that South Carolina wins. But Clemson has to play one of its better games this season to win it. South Carolina just has to play an average game to beat Clemson.
Clemson needs Miami or SMU to lose to get in, right? Or are they chaos away from being 10-2 and getting in as a third ACC team? Is there a path for that?
I think one of the 3-loss SEC teams would get in over a 10-2 Clemson that didn't make the ACC championship.
If Clemson beats up on or looks superior to South Carolina, does that send a message to the committee.
It would certainly help because it would put them in the same sphere as Alabama and Ole Miss.
With a fewer loss. Like
which both beat South Carolina as well.
We do this every year or every week, but like they lost fewer. They have one fewer loss. That matters. It should matter.
No, it doesn't. Download the app. Best daily fantasy game in America. Use the code Staples when you sign up. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. They are populating the college football board for this week. It will get more populated as the week goes on. You play some Monday Night Football right now, though. Like some clashing allegiances here. J.K. Dobbins, Chargers running back, 48.5 rushing yards, more or less. Could J.K. Dobbins, a Buckeye, help Jim Harbaugh's team win a game? This is a Harbaugh Bowl on Monday Night Football. You've got the Chargers and you've got the Ravens. Jim Harbaugh versus John Harbaugh for the first time since that Super Bowl where the lights went out. Come on. Justin Herbert, 257.5 passing yards, more or less. Derrick Henry, 86.5 rushing yards, more or less. You decide. You play as few as 2 squares. The more squares you play, the higher the potential payout. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the code Staples. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. All right, Ari. Who do you think would win if they played? Who do you think would win if Clemson played Alabama or Ole Miss? They played an easier
I just
schedule.
Picked South Carolina.
They had one fewer loss because they played an easier schedule. You keep saying that the wins and losses, but it also matters. Did you play an easier schedule?
So if you play an easy schedule, you have to live up to the standard of the 4-team field. And if you play a hard schedule, whatever happens.
No, if you play an easy schedule, you should win more games. If you play a harder schedule, you should win fewer games.
They literally won more games than the teams we're talking about.
The way you played in those games should be judged. Like you played a harder schedule and you got your ass kicked in the games you lost, then we're not even having a conversation here.
I know, but you said they have to win more games, and they did.
Okay, but one more win than the team that played the much harder schedule does not mean they are definitively a better team or more deserving of being in the playoff.
I know, but if being 10-2 isn't enough, then what you're saying is that if you have an easy schedule, you have to play a season
let's say
that's good
Clemson
enough to
kicks the crap out of South Carolina.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not trying to
but I want this is instructive because this is the argument that will happen in the committee room.
Yeah.
Clemson kicks the crap out of South Carolina.
34-10.
Now arguing between 10-2 Clemson and 9-3 Ole Miss. Both of them beat South Carolina. Both of them played Georgia. What happened when they played Georgia?
Yeah, that's right. I think that Clemson is screwed because of how it lost to Georgia.
Bingo.
I think
if you get your ass kicked.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I think I would put them in. The thing that is frustrating to me, though, is because strength of schedule is such an important metric, I'm not even saying it's the right or wrong thing here, but I'm saying you're holding Clemson in this specific scenario to the 4-team field standard. Because
I'm holding them to this standard because they played Georgia like Ole Miss played Georgia, and they happen to play some easier games than Ole Miss's other games that they played.
But I'm saying the difference between 10-2 and 1 loss for Clemson is the difference between getting into the 12-team and the 4-team. That's all I'm saying. They have to be a 1-loss team that is potentially a conference champion.
Yes, to get when you play an easier schedule, you need to win more games. When you play a harder schedule, you don't have to win as many games. That's logic.
Right. But then at the end of the year, SMU will have played an easier schedule because Clemson has played a harder schedule than SMU, right?
Agreed.
It's similar, but they've played, so they'll both be 2-loss teams and played in the same conference. But
they did play in the same conference, and SMU didn't lose any games in the conference and beat the team on the road that Clemson lost to at home in conference.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out a way for Clemson because 10-2 with a blowout loss in your opener.
I don't think there's a way because, unfortunately, the thing that would help them is beating South Carolina, and the same thing that is holding back South Carolina. Like South Carolina beats Clemson, they're not getting in either. Like the thing that's holding back South Carolina would also hold back Clemson.
Yeah, teams in your way. But
yeah,
if you would have told me Clemson will be 10-2 at the end of the year, and their only loss would be or they only have 1 loss in ACC play, I'd be like, they'd probably be like the 11 or 10 seed. Like that's what my assumption would have been. coming into the year. And it just sucks because we're talking about, at the beginning of the show, Alabama getting in as a 3-loss team after losing 21-3 or whatever it was on Saturday to Oklahoma, but Clemson hasn't been good enough. Like, I just don't know. I really just don't know if I'm like 100% on board with that. That's all.
Well, we're going to get to the Miami-Syracuse game because all of this conversation may just blow up.
Because the most important metric that you can go off of, the most important one to me, is your record. That's why they keep them. All the other things are
not all
secondary and ancillary.
I can make a schedule where my record's going to be a hell of a lot better.
But I start at record.
Yeah, see, you're the reason we're going to get a bunch of shitty non-conference games, because if you say that, then teams will schedule the worst possible opponents to make sure that they don't lose games. So thanks, sorry for that. I'd rather play good games.
Talk to Clemson about how the merits of scheduling Georgia. Let them know how you feel about it.
If they've beaten Georgia, they'd unequivocally be in. Win.
But they have nothing to gain from it.
Oh, no. If they'd beaten Georgia, they'd unequivocally be in. They would have gained something there.
And if they
got their ass kicked, which showed us something.
And if they didn't play them at all, they would have.
Thank you, Ari, for the crappy games. We're moving on. It's your fault. We're going to get crappy games in the future. Just you.
You think that I have that much influence? But just you.
Yes, it's your fault.
I wish I had this much influence of like cash coming into my account.
Okay, what can I do?
It's my money and I want it now. Listen, that's the thing. But that's the thing, that it's not my fault. It's your fault for saying the reason why they can't play that game is that they're out if they lose it. You're the one holding them out. You know what you should do? You should reward them.
I want them to be rewarded, but they don't get rewarded for getting their ass kicked. You got to win it, or at least show up.
But also, too, what if we came up with a way where if you play a top 10 team in the first 2 weeks of the season, like it's weighted less than other games would be on your schedule or something? Like, because you cannot have an environment where you're burying Clemson's entire season because it didn't play well.
I'm not burying Clemson's entire season. If they'd beaten Louisville, there wouldn't be a problem.
I know, but they actually do. They had a pretty good year. That's all I'm like. They didn't have a dog shit year, and we're talking about them like they're like a 4-loss team right now.
Well, again,
they lost in a neutral site. Wasn't it in Atlanta too? To Georgia.
It was in Atlanta
by 100.
Clemson is very close to Atlanta as well.
But they basically navigated their schedule. Like, also too, they got their ass kicked by Louisville. Like, I don't even know why I've become the champion of Clemson.
I know. I don't understand why this is the hill you've chosen to die on.
Because it's not Clemson, it's situations like Clemson. Like, because there's other teams that are going to be in this situation.
Clemson lost to Louisville on like a controversial call or a last-second kick, like we're having a very different conversation right now. Very different.
Squirrel, Andy, move on.
Oh, thank you, JC, in the chat. I appreciate that. Squirrel. All right.